Hey, Stacey David here, and this is the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Cornwall Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919. That's right, over 100 years building tools and still going strong. If you need tools, check them out. You won't be disappointed. All right, let's get rolling. Okay, I am sure that you guys have heard that there is a new Bullitt movie coming out. Now, I'm sure this is going to open up all kinds of discussion, and I'm really curious. We want to hear what you think about this. And there's a lot of questions, a lot of things I want to cover on this. First of all, what we've heard about the movie, it's going to be starring Bradley Cooper, and it's going to be directed by Steven Spielberg. Okay, so there's a couple of really good choices right there. But the question is, should they do a remake of Bullitt? And what are they going to do with it? And, of course, most people go, no remake. Well, you're in luck then, because supposedly this is not a remake. This is just a different story of the same character. So it's not going to be the remake of the Bullitt movie, which I think is really wise. It's just the Frank Bullitt character in another situation. So that brings up the burning question, is it going to be in San Francisco? Is there going to be a car chase? What car are they going to use? You know, what would you use? And what do you guys think about that? When it comes to car chases in general, the school that I come from on that, to me, it's like it has to tell the story. And that was the magic about the Bullitt chase scene, because when you look at that, you're like, okay, so what is it about the Bullitt chase scene that still keeps it toward the top of one of the greatest chase scenes of all time? I mean, you had stunts in movies of guys like running cars off the road or crashing or something like that, but you didn't have this full chase scene. So what was it about Bullitt? Well, if you watch it, it tells a story. It's not just mindless stunts. You see, from the moment that Bill Hickman, who's the stuntman in the Charger, straps on his seatbelt, and you hear the revving of the engines and the eyes in the mirror, it starts to tell a story. You see, how the Steve McQueen character gets behind the hitman, and it's a whole cat and mouse thing, and you're following it. And that's the magic of that. It tells the story. And and they do it with all the downshifts. I mean, that Mustang must have had a 16-speed transmission in it. And, of course, the Charger had a zillion hubcaps because they all kept coming off. But looking past that stuff, those were all done just to heighten the tension and the intensity of what was going on. The fact that it was done the way it was is what made it so good. And, of course, later on, as the chase scene became a staple in the movies, well, people just tried to out-stunt each other. And that's how come you might have had some great stunts in some movies, but it wasn't something that accentuated the story. It's like a great guitar solo or a great, piano solo or something like that. It's only great if it accentuates the song. If it goes somewhere else, it just kind of hangs there like a big turd. You don't want that. You want something that's going to make the whole song better. So in a chase scene, it has to make the whole movie better. And in the case of the original Bullitt movie, well, the chase scene was kind of the movie. If you've watched the movie, it's not the best movie made, that's for sure. The story-wise and this kind of thing. There's two good things that the Bullitt movie introduced. It introduced Jacqueline Bisset to the world, and it introduced the Mustang and the chase scene, to the world. That's the big question on the new Bullitt movie, what you think it might do. Now, I find it very interesting. If you dig into the history of the Bullitt movie, the car chase was not even in the original script. You can thank Steve McQueen for that, because he was adamant about there needed to be a big stunt scene. Of course, Steve McQueen's a big car guy. And he wanted that action in there. He's the one that pushed for the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape, which arguably made Steve McQueen, Steve McQueen. And ironically, as much as Steve wanted to, they didn't allow him to do the jump. That was his buddy, Bud Ekins, who was one of the stuntmen that was on the Bullitt movie. So what Steve McQueen did is he got together with stuntman Max Balchowski, and then you guys will probably recognize that name. He's the one that did Old Yeller, the race car, which was in all kinds of Elvis movies and stuff. Max was a legend, not only as a racer, but as a car builder. And, he's hung around Carroll Shelby and all those guys. He was part of that group. There was Bud Ekins. Obviously, we talked about him. There's Bill Hickman. Bill Hickman's the guy that was driving the Charger, with the glasses on. And he went on to do, all these great scenes from French Connection to the 7-Ups. Bill is kind of the guy that did all those stunts. Kerry Lofton was also involved. And, of course, Kerry was also one of the great automotive stuntmen. He's the guy that drove the truck in Duel, the Steven Spielberg movie. It came out about 71 or so. So, as you can see, it's kind of funny that Spielberg is back on this. We're kind of coming full circle with all these people that are involved. And there's one thing, speaking of Spielberg and telling a story, if you haven't seen the movie Duel, you got to watch it. Because most of the movie is just storytelling through a big truck that wants to kill this guy in this Valiant. So it's a great bit of storytelling. It's Jaws without the shark. He's using a truck instead. So if anybody can pull this story off, obviously it would be Spielberg. But anyway, so McQueen put these stuntmen together, and they created this stunt scene, this driving scene in Bullitt. And, it has withstood the test of time. It is just one of these great movies. Now, the question is, would it have been the same without a Mustang? Would it have been the same? One of the magic things about Bullitt was it was muscle cars. Not just the Mustang. It also introduced the Charger. Now, that's an interesting point right there. Because originally, Ford had the deal there. So they wanted McQueen to drive the Mustang, and they wanted the Hitman to be driving a Galaxy. You just let that sink in a little bit. That completely changes the dynamic of the whole scene. A big old Galaxy, especially from 68. I mean, it's almost like an LTD. The problem was the Galaxy was too slow to do the jump sequences. So the actual producers, they went down, they got a couple, the 3 Chargers, and the rest is history. All of a sudden, Mopar is in the game as, arguably one of the greatest, stunt and film vehicles of all time is the Charger. And there were 3 of those Chargers. A lot of people don't realize, there were 3 of the Mustangs as well. The one Mustang was destroyed, and it was documented. It was crushed. Toward the end of the chase scene, when Steve McQueen loses control of the car and goes into the ditch, and you see the front suspension all bent up underneath there, that tore up the whole subframe, messed up the car, so that car was toast. Also, the guy on the motorcycle that goes down right at that point, that's Bud Ekins, the stuntman, who also did the jump in The Great Escape that we talked about earlier. You see, these guys are all a bunch of friends. They're all hanging out, which is the cool thing about the stunt community in Hollywood, and it still is like that. So you've got all this stuff going on, but now you've got the magic cars. You've got the Charger, and they're all driving sticks, and they're shifting gears, and you got this great engine sound that you've never had in movies before. And another thing you really got to give McQueen credit for. Ford was just like, here's a couple Mustangs, rock and roll. Steve McQueen was like, no, that's not good enough. He had to modify it. So he went to Max Balchowski, and he had the springs and shocks of all the cars done. And he also removed the trim. He blacked out the grille and had a Shelby GT 500 steering wheel put in it. So just a few little tweaks, custom tweaks, and of course the torque thrust wheels made all the difference. So it looked like an enthusiast car from that era. That's part of the magic. I love to watch it just for that reason. And as you can see, these cars, the thing that made the Bullitt chase so realistic is it was just real cars. You see when Steve McQueen loses control and wrecks the car and then comes back in reverse, I mean, that rear axle is just hopping like crazy, and it's a one-wheel drive, it doesn't even have a pause in it. So you can see the one black mark. But it's just, they're just ragging these cars, which is part of the realism that we have lost in some of these car movies, And so I hope that if they do something like that, and if they do have a car chase in the new Bullitt, that it helps tell the story. And that brings me back to the question of, should people do remakes? And my thinking on it is only if they make it better and they make it different, because it's a different era. So if you just remake the same movie, what's the point of that? The Italian Job is a great example of that. When they came out with the new movie, The Italian Job, they used Mini Coopers like the original movie, but the story was completely different. It was more modern. The stunts they used, the cars made sense, and they made the story work that they used those cars. And when you watch the original movie, it's a completely different animal. It almost has like comedy aspects to it. It was a little cheeky for that kind of movie, whereas the other one was more of a drama. And I thought they did a really good job with it. And I kind of feel the same way about that, for those of you that are music people. When I hear somebody, say you're going to remake a song, you're going to recut it, I want to hear your take on it. I don't want to hear you just do the same thing somebody else did, because why would I want to hear that? A prime example of this is Stevie Ray Vaughan playing Voodoo Child. If you haven't heard it, you need to do yourself a favor, Google it, and just listen to him. Listen to Jimi Hendrix's version of it, and then listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan. You can see the influence, but Stevie Ray Vaughan does his own thing while paying tribute, to the original. But it's by no means just a note-by-note copy of what Hendrix did. And thus, they're both great. And to me, when it comes to a sequel or a remake of a movie, that's what I want to see. And if you can't make it better, I really don't want to see it. That's the thing. With somebody like Spielberg at the helm, I can almost guarantee you this movie is going to be good. I don't know. It would be just like Spielberg to not put any kind of a car chase in it. If it doesn't fit the story, he won't put it in. I promise you that. I think that they could probably work it in somehow. What happens with any of these things, you guys that are movie buffs, you know what I'm about to say here. A lot of times they just try to outstunt each other. And that's what's happened with the Fast and Furious movies. The stunts have gotten so ridiculous, and they don't really enhance the story. If you want a prime example of a modern movie I thought that pulled it off really well, it was Baby Driver. Because the stunts that they did in that particular movie worked with the story. So they helped enhance the story. You totally got it. And nothing seemed to be really out of place, which I'm sure is why that movie still rates very high. The John Wick movies is a little more just like, hey, wow, let me just thrash this car around. It's a little more like the Fast and Furious franchise. So thus, there's not any real memorable stunts in there. We will see where this goes. I'm looking forward to seeing how it comes out. And that brings up a question for you guys to think about. What cars would you like to see in it? Say there is a two-car chase scene like that. What two cars do you think it should be now? And just let that sink in. Should it be a Mustang? And why? Because if this is a totally different thing, there's no reason it would be a Mustang. People change cars all the time. So would it be a Charger? Would it be a Challenger? Would it be a Camaro? Would it be a Corvette? Would it be an import? What do you think about that? Boy, if that thought there doesn't blow your mind. One question I get a lot when guys are talking about jobs is about Cornwall Tools. We talk about Cornwall a lot, and you see me use their stuff on the show a lot. People are asking, hey, how do I become a dealer? Man, all you have to do is contact Cornwall, tell them you're interested in becoming a dealer, and you'll be on your way. And it is a great company to work for, and they've been around a long time. You've seen the tools, you've seen the way they operate. They're definitely worth checking out. So if you're sitting there and kind of wondering where your life is going to go and maybe looking for a new career, you may want to look into becoming a Cornwall tool dealer. Okay, I've got a question here from Lee. And Lee goes, hello, I would like to get some information about the Copperhead Project. He's been watching the old videos and the buildup of that. And he said, you had a pop-up hidden gauge that you used for the nitrous gauges. And he said, I'd like to do something like that. He said, is that a kit that I can purchase? Actually, Lee, no, that wasn't a kit. I actually got that out of a junkyard car. I believe it was out of a Nissan, but I'm not sure. The reason I bring that up is we have a huge aftermarket out there now where you have all this great stuff, but there still is times where you want to go to a wrecking yard and find those cool things. Taillights, rear exhaust outlets, little trap doors, little things like that in interiors. Some of these newer vehicles, because there's so much plastic on them, they don't have the good trim and things like that. But there are some things that some of these vehicles have great mirrors, side mirrors. They have great exhaust outlets, the way they're cut into the body, like in the rear valence panels, that can be utilized into a vehicle. Some of their headlights and taillights, the way that they're contoured into the body, there is some great stuff that you can cut out and use. And the interiors, which is where I got these little doors. There's always cool little doors, little push button things like that you can utilize in a modern custom or a vehicle that you're doing. As you're looking around, you're riding in your friends' cars, you're looking at stuff. I always just kind of make mental notes of like, gosh, that's got a really cool, door handle, or that's got a really cool interior handle. That's a great steering wheel. It's a great gauge cluster. If nothing more, it can give you ideas about things that you want to build or fabricate yourself. But those particular pieces there, sometimes you got to make them yourself. You can't, the aftermarket doesn't have all of that. That's where I got them. Good luck to you. All right, that wraps it up for us today. Make sure that you check out the Gears TV website. We got all kinds of cool stuff there. We got a couple new die casts coming out. Got some books coming out. We have all kinds of things going on. But the most important thing is get out there and turn some wrenches yourself. Get a project. If you don't have one, start working on it. And if you don't have tools, check out Cornwall. They can help you out there. Also, don't forget to check out Gears on Gears Nation, Amazon, Mav TV, and Motor Trend. All right, we'll see you down the road.